My husband, Jack, gave Andy Prenmark a job after he got a lot of money from his family. He said to me, "I don't need to stay with you anymore. I'm getting $5 million. I don't need you when I have all that money." His words were cold, and it felt like he was ending our marriage after being together for a long time. I felt like I was just in his way, but Jack doesn't know yet about the big secret connected to the $5 million he's inheriting. "Mom, is it true that Grandpa is really sick?" My daughter Sophie surprised me with her question. Jack's dad, Ethan, being very sick was supposed to be a secret between Jack and me. "Did you hear that from your dad?" The only one who could have told Sophie is Jack. "Yes, Dad called and said I should give up Grandpa's money." Sophie's words made me worried. Just because of that one phone call, my peaceful life was going to change. A few days after Sophie's call, Ethan passed away quietly. Since I got married, I've lived with Jack's parents, and I've always been there to help them when they were sick. It's been 5 years since Jack's mom died, and now we got the news about Ethan. The funeral went smoothly, but just when I thought things would calm down, my husband's behavior changed a lot. "Why is this place so dirty? Have you not been cleaning properly?" Jack keeps pointing out tiny bits of dust and small stains. "I'm sorry, maybe I missed it. I'll clean it right now." "This place doesn't look clean either." "Are you sure you clean every day?" "Yes, I clean like I always do." Even though I clean like usual, I don't understand why Jack is so mad. But it seems like it's not just about cleaning. "Why did you make this? I wish you'd think more of how it tastes when you cook. It's tough when the meals I put effort into get criticized one by one. Even the dishes he used to love are now not good enough. Is something bothering you lately?" I finally ask, but it seems to make him even more upset. There's no point denying it. "Honestly, the food you make isn't good. I've been putting up with it because my parents never complained, but I've always thought it lacked flavor." Jack's words hurt me deeply. It's the first time he's criticized me so harshly. When Jack was this upset, I knew saying anything would just make it worse. My mom always cleaned and did laundry perfectly, and when she cooked, she put so much care into it. "You're nothing like her. I've been patient, but I can't take it anymore." It was the first time he compared me to his mother and criticized me. All I could do was think hard about myself. "I'm really sorry. I never thought he didn't like my cooking." Jack always used to smile and say it's delicious when he ate. When we first got married, his mom gave me cooking tips. It's hard to believe he always thought my cooking was bland. Tears started to flow. "Do you think crying will change anything? Your tears don't mean anything now. Don't cry in front of me. Everything lately just feels so hard." After he said that, Jack suddenly got up and left the house, slamming the door. "Jack, where are you going? Please come back." But he didn't seem to hear me. My head was spinning, trying to understand this sudden change, unable to grasp what had just happened. Until a few months ago, we were a close couple, sharing everything, holding hands, enjoying the little things in life together, and facing small problems as a team. I couldn't understand why we had grown apart. Then, I remembered what Sophie had said during our call. "It's about Grandpa's inheritance." Sophie's voice sounded unsure. That night, Jack came home much later than usual, and I didn't get the chance to ask him about it. Was something going on? Maybe Jack had learned something about the inheritance and didn't want to talk about it. I tried to talk to Sophie about it. Why are they talking about the inheritance while Grandpa is still healthy? She had her doubts about Jack and told me she had shared them with him. If things stay the same with the inheritance, I'll get everything. Considering Sophie, I think this is the best option. Remembering how Jack had been distant with Sophie lately, I started to have doubts. The thought of Jack taking all the inheritance and leaving me behind made my chest feel tight, and tears filled my eyes again. In my sadness, I noticed the sounds around me more vividly. Just as the room went quiet, the phone suddenly rang loudly. I didn't feel like answering it, but it could be important. Looking at the caller ID, I saw Jack's name, the same Jack who had left earlier. I felt drained, but I didn't want to face any consequences for ignoring the call, so I reluctantly picked up. "What are you doing? Don't make me wait." "I don't have much time," he said in a commanding tone that caught me off guard. He could be stubborn sometimes, but he wasn't the type to yell without a reason. Feeling surprised by his sudden change in behavior, I let out a small sigh, hoping he wouldn't notice. "What's wrong? Is something the matter? I wanted to talk to you about something." "I'll be home soon." Stay there and wait for me. Jack's voice sounded colder than usual lately. I just replied with a quick okay and hung up. When I looked at the clock, more than 3 hours had passed since Jack left. I had been crying so much, feeling confused and hurt, that I hadn't noticed the time passing. After a while, I heard the door open and Jack's footsteps. A sweet smell, a body wash we didn't have at home, drifted from him. That unfamiliar scent made the pain in my chest worse. I'm going straight to work. I want to end our relationship. As a thank you, I'll give you $220,000. His words confirmed my worst fears. Even though I had feared it, facing this reality was still shocking. I felt like I couldn't cry anymore. I'm tired of you not taking care of things at home. I want to live peacefully as I get older. Linda had also hoped for a peaceful old age, but it seemed like Jack was the one ruining that dream. Why? My words trailed off as I tried to find something to say. Jack looked at me with a smug smile. Then suddenly, Jack's phone rang with a loud ringtone. It was a tone I didn't recognize, different from his usual one. To me, it felt like the strange sound hinted at communication from someone specific. I'm sorry, but I haven't finished my errands yet. Linda sensed a hint of softness in Jack's voice, different from his usual tone towards her. It felt somewhat gentler and more personal. Plus, with the sweet scent of body wash lingering in the room, the unfamiliar ringtone from earlier, and the change in Jack's demeanor, it all hinted at something he might be hiding. I knew it, Linda whispered quietly so Jack wouldn't hear. His affair was becoming too obvious. Considering the inheritance he might get soon, the alimony might not matter to him, even if his cheating comes out. After finishing his call, Jack looked at Linda with cold, emotionless eyes. My plans haven't changed. I need you to sign this document. I'll be in touch later. Make sure it's signed by then. I won't be coming back to this house. Remember, this house is now yours. Without saying another word or even looking at her, Jack headed towards the door. What did our 40-year marriage mean? A few days later, Linda found herself at a lawyer's office, gathering information about Jack's actions and Ethan's inheritance. She explained everything to their daughter, Sophie. Sophie's expression changed. It was painful for Linda to admit their mistakes to their daughter, but Sophie, out of love for her mother, cried and then resolved to confront Jack. She even introduced Linda to a lawyer to help them through it. Hello, I'm Robinson. I'll be handling your case. I'll do my best to support you, said the woman named Robinson, sitting across from me. She seemed to be in her late 40s, radiating a calm presence. Her tidy hair and professional attire gave off a sense of professionalism. Her clear way of speaking made me feel reassured. I'm Lily Johnson. I'm sorry for reaching out to you so suddenly. I'm a bit nervous since it's our first meeting in these circumstances, I said. That's okay. Sophie has already given me some information. She briefed me on the situation, so I can discuss it with you calmly, replied Mrs. Robinson. After researching and gathering information both by myself and with Mrs. Robinson's help, we confirmed some facts. My husband doesn't have any siblings, so if Sophie gives up the inheritance, the big fortune, around $5 million, will all go to him. Also, he started an affair with a woman named Jennifer at a bar they visited, and it seems the relationship lasted about 6 months. I was curious about what happened between her and my husband. I admitted to Mrs. Robinson during our joint investigation. Together, we uncovered an important fact that my husband might not know yet. Linda, how do you intend to proceed from here? Mrs. Robinson asked me gently, her eyes soft and understanding. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I deeply appreciate it, I replied, smiling gratefully at her. After paying the fee for the procedures and exchanging a few words, I quietly left her office. 5 days later, I got a call from Jack on my cell phone. He suggested meeting at a quiet cafe. I arrived a bit early, and the cafe was surprisingly empty. The owner welcomed me warmly and said I could sit anywhere. I chose a seat by the window to enjoy the peaceful view outside. After a while, the bell on the door rang, and I saw Jack and his new girlfriend, Jennifer, walking in. When Jack saw me, he smirked proudly. Are you ready for the divorce? He asked bluntly. I was taken aback by his first statement. It seemed like he was convinced he was in control of the situation. Is this your new partner? I hadn't expected him to bring her to such an important discussion, and I was surprised by his decision. I wondered if he was still the man I once loved deeply. Had he changed because of his cheating, or was he always like this? I couldn't tell. You're Jack's wife, right? I'm Jennifer. I've recently started seeing him, she said, suddenly smiling. I couldn't quite understand the meaning behind her sudden smile. I've heard a lot about you from Jack. Seeing you in person, you do look a bit older. I wonder how Jack put up with all these years. I feel a bit sorry for him. Jennifer seemed to take great care of her appearance. She looked much younger than her actual age, which was in her 60s. Compared to her, I might look my age, but I couldn't accept the way she said it. Jennifer, it's those kinds of comments I warned you about, Jack interjected. But yes, I did think that. But Jack, if it were me, I would cherish you more, I said softly. I understand, Linda. I don't want you to overthink it anymore. I just want you to file the divorce papers, Jack said, his attitude not surprising me. Hold on, there's something I need to discuss, I said, noticing a hint of confusion on Jack's face. What do you mean? Is this about your father's inheritance? Is that why, after all these years of marriage, you're making this decision? I wanted to know the truth behind everything. I fail to see how my father's inheritance and you are connected. That's solely my father's affair. I've heard detailed stories about your father's extensive inheritance from Sophie. I know its value. So what? That inheritance isn't for you to claim, Jack retorted. But I'll answer. Actually, more than the inheritance itself, the end of caring for my parents is one of the reasons I want to part ways with you. Just a caregiver role, I couldn't believe Jack saw me only as a caregiver and not the loving wife I used to be. I don't even have the energy to cry. Can we speed this up, Jack? I want to start our new life. Besides, have you still not let go of Jack? Anger and sadness hit me in waves. My hand trembled as I took a deep breath and pulled out the divorce papers. But my name isn't written yet. The situation isn't settled for me to hand them over. You remember promising me the house and money, right? I remembered our conversation clearly. Yeah, I did say that. I'm a man of my word, so I plan to give you the house and money. You say you're kind, but a truly kind person wouldn't just use their wife as a caregiver and then abandon her. So I'm demanding rightful compensation of $30,000 and the rights to the house, I said firmly. What compensation? When we talked about money, it was supposed to be $20,000. You always nitpick at the very end. Your attitude of trying to pay me the absolute minimum is so obvious. But the difference of $10,000 means a lot to me, Jack retorted. So I think $30,000 as compensation is fair. Your girlfriend is Jennifer, right? I thought of claiming from her too, but instead, I want to settle for $330,000. And I intend to sign the divorce papers right here in front of you. Jennifer unexpectedly commented, first suggesting that $30,000 would be okay. Jack, pay it if you're satisfied with it, she added. With Jennifer's statement, Jack finally agreed to the alimony of $30,000. Now we need Jack's signature on the land title change document Mrs. Robinson prepared and the notarized alimony agreement, I said calmly, surprising Jack with my preparedness. We lined up our seals at the designated spot, and Jack smiled as if he anticipated something. So Linda, will you sign the divorce papers right now? He asked. Understood. Here's the divorce paper, I replied, carefully writing my name and firmly stamping it. Jack couldn't hold back his laughter and laughed out loud again. With this, you and I no longer have any relationship. Also, I have something to tell you. Actually, I'm set to inherit $5 million, so I didn't need someone like you. Thanks for the divorce. What a foolish ex-wife you had, letting go so easily for just $30,000. Jack sneered as I left, followed by the loud laughter of Jack and Jennifer echoing. I hurriedly left and headed to City Hall. My only goal now was to complete this procedure as quickly as possible and sever ties with the two of them completely. They might be laughing happily now, but I wondered how long their happiness would last. A month later, I sold the house I received from Jack, prepared for a new life, and decided to live near my daughter Sophie, who planned to start her life near her husband's parents' home. Despite my concerns about Jack's mother living nearby, Sophie's husband warmly welcomed me and was always considerate, which reassured me greatly. My daughter Sophie initially seemed angry at Jack's actions, but when I shared a certain fact with her, her expression completely changed and she smiled brightly. I had a hunch that Jack would soon realize my plan. As evidence, I deliberately didn't change my mobile number. The day my intuition became reality came sooner than expected. From the afternoon, my phone rang repeatedly, and sure enough, it was Jack. He called many times, but at first, I purposely didn't answer. After receiving repeated calls, I finally picked up. "Hello, why are you doing this?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "What's the matter?" "You called out of the blue." Jack raised his voice. "What's the problem? Where are you right now?" I thought he might have visited our old house. But in reality, that house had already been sold. "Since we decided to divorce, there's no me for you to be involved with anymore." "Where did Sophie go?" "I can't find her. It seemed he went to Sophie's old house." Of course she wasn't there, and I handled all the information and procedures related to Sophie's husband's family home. So Jack had no way of knowing. He seems to have hit a dead end and contacted me. How can you go on a work trip to another country? You don't have a job, so why are you making up stories like that? It's not made up. I genuinely have a job that requires me to go abroad. Well, we're getting divorced then. I can't be with someone who lies. And with that, he stormed out of the room. He thinks I'm lazy and unemployed because I work from home. But I have a stable income and help with our expenses, yet he refuses to see that. A few days after I got back from my work trip, I found papers saying we were getting divorced, already signed. I understand now. If he can't see things differently, maybe it's best we go our separate ways. So I signed the papers and head to the state court. My name is Hannah Robinson. I'm 29 years old. My husband's name is Jake. He's 30. We met in college and we got married when I was 25. We were more like best friends than romantic partners, always honest with each other. That openness was good, but sometimes it led to unexpected outcomes. For me, it all changed when I talked about my dream with him. My dream is to run an online store selling imported goods. The idea came up during my part-time job at a boutique while I was in college. I've always loved foreign designs and was drawn to them even during my part-time gig. After I graduated, I worked full-time at that boutique, but I couldn't shake my dream. I wanted to open my own shop and fill it with my favorite foreign goods, sharing them with customers. My parents and friends cheered me on, saying things like "good luck" and "you'll make it." Surely Jake would understand my dream and support me. So when Jake got home from work, I tried to casually bring up my dream. "Hey Jake, you know I've been mentioning wanting to open my own shop, right?" "Well, about that." "Oh, not this again. You can't just do things on a whim. You should just give up." "Why would you say that?" "This isn't just a sudden idea. It's something I've been thinking about for a long time. Sometimes things just aren't possible. Life isn't as easy as you think it is. You don't have to be so harsh. Why do you always shoot down my ideas right away?" I say, my voice rising unintentionally. My thoughts brushed aside. Jake gives me a cold look, his tone sharp. "Fine, then tell me, what's your backup plan if this business of yours fails?" "Well, I don't expect it to be an instant success." "And what about your income in the meantime? The bills and living costs we share. Are you saying I have to handle it all now?" "Fine, do whatever you want," Jake says dismissively. "But if it doesn't work out and you regret it, don't come crying to me." Every time I talk about starting my own business, Jake gets irritated. The reason is simple. He worries about my income becoming unstable. I work at an import shop that's doing well with lots of customers. Because of that, I earn a good amount, maybe even a bit more than Jake, who's an office worker. I've been covering more expenses like meals and rent because of this. But Jake can't handle the idea of my income going down. At first he'd say things like "take your time" and "prepare well," but now he's just trying to discourage me. Still, I won't give up on my dream of owning my own shop, no matter how much Jake opposes it. I decided to prioritize chasing my dream. Despite Jake's objections, I pushed forward, and at 26, I launched my own online boutique. At first, things were tough, just like Jake had warned. But over time, I tried different strategies. I made the most of being online, worked with well-known e-commerce platforms, used social media for promotion, and did everything I could. And thanks to all this effort, a year after starting my own business, I managed to secure a stable income. From there, I grew my customer base and expanded my product range. Now my annual sales reached $300,000. Because Jake had been so against it, I never talked to him about my sales. I figured he wouldn't be interested anyway, and he never asked. But he always reminded me about the bills and living expenses. I just handed over the money he asked for without argument and tried to keep work-related talk neutral. Then one day, I got a message in the DMs of my online shop. I'm a regular customer of your shop. I was wondering, could you start selling furniture in addition to the international knickknacks? Actually, many customers had asked me to add furniture to my shop's offerings. But selling furniture online is tricky compared to smaller items. Furniture is more expensive and factors like material matter a lot. Even though I had experience working at an import shop, selling furniture without seeing it first comes with risks. So I decided to reach out to my old boss at the import shop to talk about it. Hello, is this the manager? I'd like to discuss something with you. As soon as Maggie, the manager, recognized me, she sounded genuinely excited. Hannah, it's been a while. If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know. Well, I've been getting requests to sell furniture in my online shop. Furniture? That sounds like a challenge. So I was thinking of seeing the items in person before selling them. How do you source your items, Maggie? I see what you're getting at. I can definitely help with that. Maggie, who had connections with overseas suppliers from before, offered to reach out to one of them and organize for them to supply furniture to my online shop. Thanks to my good relationship with Maggie, the overseas supplier agreed to Maggie's suggestion. I decided I would travel abroad to find the furniture, but I couldn't just leave without telling my husband. So that night, I brought it up with him. Jake, about the week after next, would it be okay if I was away for about a week? A week? Why do you need to be gone for so long? Well, you see, I might have to go abroad for work with Maggie from the shop I used to work at. Huh, going abroad? That's a pretty unbelievable lie. What do you mean? My husband pointed at me, his expression mocking. You're going overseas for work? You barely have a job. What are you even talking about? Well, hold on a second. You know I have my online shop, right? This trip abroad is for finding items to sell in the shop. So if you think I'll just buy into a work-related lie, are you kidding me? Your little side business, there's only so much it can achieve. Believe what you want, but our sales are doing pretty well at the moment, and our customer base is growing steadily. This trip came about because of a request from one of our customers. If you keep insisting I won't let you, practically a homebody, leave for a whole week. With a beer in hand, my husband stormed off to the bathroom. I let out a deep sigh without meaning to. Why can't you try to understand? His reaction is too harsh just because he doesn't approve of my work. But I can't just go abroad without his permission. I have to convince him, no matter what. Even though I was hesitant to bring it up again, I couldn't ignore the issue. The next day, when my husband came back from work, I tried talking to him once more. Jake, about what we talked about yesterday, look, I'm tired. I don't have time to entertain your accusations. I'm just stating the facts. An unemployed person going on a business trip abroad. You're pretty good at spinning tales. I'm not lying. I really need to go abroad for work, I insisted, grabbing his arm to plead with him, but he looked down at me mocking. Oh, really? Well, liars get divorced too. Divorced? What are you saying? You know I can't stand liars, especially people like you who are always trying to show off. I didn't mean. Shut up. You just want an excuse to go on a vacation abroad. And I bet your boss is a man too, right? Divorce. Divorce. I'll make sure to demand my share of everything. With that, he stormed out of the room. In that moment, anger boiled inside me, making my veins throb. Who does he think he is? He looks down on me just because I work from home. He only wants to feel superior. Enough is enough. If that's how he wants it, then I'll do as I please. From then on, I stopped asking for his permission and went ahead with my business trip abroad as planned. 2 weeks later, I flew overseas with Maggie as scheduled. We went straight to our suppliers in the UK, where we checked out the furniture and accessories for my boutique. While abroad, I took advantage of the opportunity to do some sightseeing with Maggie, enjoying some fulfilling days. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. My phone was bombarded with messages from Jake. You didn't actually go abroad, did you? Come back home now. I'll forgive you if you return today. Time's up. We're getting divorced, you worthless woman. Each message only annoyed me more, but I chose not to respond. I knew any reply from me would just make things worse. When I got back, if he's willing, we'll talk again. With that decision in mind, I enjoyed a carefree week abroad. When the business trip ended, I said goodbye to Maggie at the airport and started my journey home. Facing Jake was uncomfortable, but I braced myself and walked through the front door. I'm home. The house was dark with no welcoming lights. As I made my way to the living room, I found laundry scattered on the floor and no space to walk. Dirty dishes and noodle containers were left in the sink. Amidst this mess, I noticed a piece of paper on the desk. What is this? It was a filled-out divorce paper. Beside it was a rough note that read, "To the cheating, jobless woman. I'm ending things with you since you never listen. Fill out the divorce papers immediately. If you want forgiveness, come to my parents' house. Then I'll reconsider." Just reading the note, I could imagine Jake's smug face. He probably thinks if he wrote this, I'd rush to apologize. But I had no intention of doing so. I signed the divorce papers and went straight to the state court. The divorce was accepted without any issues. Then, I went to the real estate agent and canceled the lease for our current apartment. Actually, this apartment was mine from when I was single. Jake moved in when we started living together because it was big enough. We talked about finding a bigger place when we had kids, but that's not happening now. After canceling the lease, I started packing immediately. The next day, I sent all my stuff back to my parents' house and arranged for Jake's things to be sent to his parents' house. All the while, he kept sending me messages with absurd demands. "Stop being stubborn and come apologize now. You have until the end of the week. Got it?" And so on. But I ignored them all. Once the apartment was empty, I went back to my parents' house. A week later, my phone had been ringing nonstop since morning. Even though I ignored it, it kept on ringing. Reluctantly, I decided to answer the call. Hoping it would be the last, I pressed the answer button. "Hello," he started shouting right away. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" His loud voice caught me off guard, and I instinctively moved the phone away from my ear. Deciding to record the conversation just in case, I responded, "What's the problem? There's nothing left to talk about. Don't play games with me. Why were all of my things delivered to my parents' house? I just got to the apartment and it's completely empty. Oh, well, I canceled the lease, so I had to get rid of everything, right?" "What? Canceled? How dare you do something like that without consulting me?" "Without consulting you? The apartment was in my name. I have the right to make decisions about it, don't I?" At this point, I had nothing to lose. His words had no effect on me, and I responded in a challenging tone. Jake showed his frustration. "Stop messing around. I don't care about the lease. We were married, remember? I lived in that apartment too. You shouldn't have canceled it without talking to me." "Married? Yes. That's right. Even if you've been unfaithful, we're still married. But canceling the lease on our apartment without talking to your husband first? What's going on in your head? Do you think you can just do whatever you want, especially since you're not working? I can't forgive you for this." He kept shouting, not caring about how I felt at all. He's so angry. He doesn't even care about me, I thought. I decided it was time to tell him the truth. Hate to break it to you, but you're getting all worked up about not forgiving me. We're not married anymore, okay?" "What? What do you mean?" "I turned in the divorce papers you forgot about, so now we're not married anymore. Why would I keep renting a place for someone I don't even know? Wait, are you kidding? You don't have a job. You'd be in trouble without my support." "What? That's ridiculous. I never depended on you for anything." Caught off guard, Jake was speechless on the phone. I felt a rush of frustration and couldn't hold it in any longer. "You've underestimated me all this time. I'm not the lazy person you think I am. I didn't cheat on you. I was traveling for work to take care of my clients. If you can't believe that, it's okay, but I won't forgive you. But wait, your online business, it's not easy to increase sales. I've been working hard for 3 years. You don't understand anything and won't even try." 3 years. Just so you know, I've been making much more money than you. You've always looked down on me. I don't want a marriage like this. You can live your miserable life alone for all I care. After ending the call, I deleted Jake's contact and blocked all communication channels. It seemed he finally grasped the reality of my successful online store, likely hearing about it from mutual friends. Despite his attempt to reach out, I had no intention of reconnecting. Jake visited my parents' house once, but my dad turned him away at the door. His own parents had learned of his mistreatment towards me and kicked him out. Now he's renting an apartment near his job, leading a solitary existence. Meanwhile, I decided to stay with my parents for a while. Thankfully, my job allows me to work remotely, which is convenient. Since my parents' house needs some renovation, I plan to start that soon. With my online store thriving, I'm not worried about anything else. I have the freedom to travel whenever necessary. Despite the divorce, I have no regrets about pursuing my dreams. I'll continue to work hard and repay those who supported me.
My name is Molly, I'm 32 years old, and I'm married to Justin, who's 35. He works in an office, while I'm a freelance fashion designer, working from home. In the beginning, my career was unpredictable, filled with small bursts of excitement, but everything changed when I landed a major project with a substantial paycheck. The success allowed Justin and me to move into a high-rise luxury apartment, a place I had always dreamed of living. Since it was my idea to move into such an upscale place, I agreed to cover the rent out of my own pocket. Justin was thrilled with our new home, and I thought we had a bright future ahead of us. I never could have imagined what would happen next. One day, Justin came home with his mother, Betty. She was 65 years old and had been living alone since her husband passed away 3 years ago. "Hi, Molly." "Hi, Betty. It's been a while. What's going on?" "Well, she wants to live with us," Justin said, clearly uncomfortable. "Why?" I asked, surprised. Justin explained that her house was getting old and she wanted to move to a better place. With limited funds, she asked if she could stay with us for a while. "Oh, I see." I understood the situation, but I wasn't exactly thrilled. Our apartment felt like a cozy haven for the two of us, and I wasn't close to Betty. The thought of having her move in felt like having a stranger in our home. "Please," Justin pleaded, taking my hands. "Her house is falling apart. I'll encourage her to find a new place soon." Okay," I reluctantly agreed, thinking it would only be for a short time. A month later, Betty moved in. "Thank you so much for letting me stay in such a fantastic apartment." "No problem, please make yourself at home," I said, forcing a smile. But just as she settled into her room, she turned to me and asked, "Sorry to dive right in, but may I borrow some money?" "Money?" I replied, stunned. She had barely unpacked her things, and she was already asking for a loan. I was taken aback by her straightforwardness. "Right, I've been seeing the doctor a lot lately, and it's been expensive. I just need a little help, please." "How much are you asking for?" "Around $300 for now." Given her age, I figured it was normal to have some health issues and medical bills could easily pile up. "All right," I said, pulling out 6 $50 bills from my purse and handing them to her. Not long after, Justin came to me for advice, his tone uneasy, which made me wonder if it was about Betty again. "You know, we should get a new car," he said out of the blue. The suggestion was so unexpected that I nearly fell off my chair. "What do you mean?" "We just bought a car 2 years ago." "Yeah, but it's too small. I think we should get a bigger one." I was baffled. The car was perfectly fine for the 2 of us, or 3, including Betty. Why did he care about the size? "I mean, my mom doesn't like it." "Why?" "I don't understand." I couldn't fathom why Betty would complain about a car that had nothing to do with her. "She wants something more luxurious, like a Mercedes." "What?" I was completely lost. "That's ridiculous. We can't afford a car like that." Who had the money to change cars for such a trivial reason? Did Betty even have a driver's license? "I'm not buying an expensive car just because she doesn't like ours," I said, firmly rejecting his suggestion. At the time, I couldn't understand why Betty cared so much about the car. Then once again, Betty approached me for money. "My medical bills have gotten more expensive, and I'm falling behind on payments. Could you help me out again?" "Should I be concerned about your health?" I asked, starting to feel uneasy. I asked her what was wrong. She paused for a moment before replying, "Not really, I've just been feeling a bit depressed and having trouble sleeping. The therapist is quite expensive." "I'm really sorry." "I see. Well, if that's the case, how much do you need?" "About $1,000 for now," she said. I blinked in surprise. $1,000? I didn't know much about therapy, but that seemed excessive. I'm sorry, she continued. My insurance only fully covers a limited number of sessions, and now I have to cover half of the costs. Ah, I see. Hold on, I'll get it to you by tomorrow, I replied, still shocked by the amount. I tried to be understanding, telling myself that therapy could be costly, depending on the treatment. But even after that, she kept coming up with excuses, medical bills, transportation fees to visit sick friends, to borrow more money from me. By the time I realized it, the amount had exceeded $5,000. Even though my job was going well, I was growing increasingly frustrated. Then one day I noticed something strange. Curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to take a peek into Betty's room. What I saw left me speechless. Designer bags and wallets were neatly arranged on the shelves. I was flabbergasted. I thought she didn't have money. How could she own such luxurious items? She had borrowed so much money from me, yet she had all this expensive stuff. I started to grow suspicious about Betty's so-called medical bills. A month later, she approached me for money again, asking casually as if it were nothing. "Can you wait a moment?" I replied, deciding that this was the time to confront her. I called Justin over, who seemed oblivious to the situation. "I want to take this opportunity to ask you, Betty, what exactly are you using the money for?" "Molly, what's going on?" Justin asked, clearly confused by the sudden question. "You know, my therapy sessions, prescriptions, and," she started to say, but her voice trailed off. "Not just those, right? You've been buying designer clothes, bags, and other expensive items, haven't you? Are you even really seeing a therapist?" "Of course I am," she insisted. "Then show me the receipts. You must have them, right?" "Well," she stammered, unable to say anything more when I pressed her with such a direct question. It became clear to me that she wasn't spending the money on her well-being, but on something else entirely. "Wait a second, what are you two talking about?" Justin asked, still baffled. "Betty has been squandering the money she borrowed from me," I explained. "It's more than $5,000, you know." Even then, Justin tried to defend her. "You're being too harsh. Can't you talk to her in a nicer way?" He had a soft spot for his mom. In other words, he was a mama's boy. "I don't have any receipts. I was shopping and eating out with my friends," Betty finally confessed. I couldn't believe how relaxed she had seemed despite supposedly having no money, and she hadn't appeared depressed at all. "If it was all a lie, then pay me back right now," I demanded. Betty looked at me with pleading eyes. "Wait, I can't come up with that amount right away." I had reached my limit. I pointed toward her room and said, "You've got all that designer stuff in there. Resell it all. Otherwise, please move out." Justin immediately jumped in to defend her. "Hey, you're being so one-sided. She deserves a little luxury too." "Luxury? I wouldn't call spending money you've borrowed a luxury. More than $5,000 down the drain. It's like a scam." "You're being disrespectful," Justin snapped. "Don't act so arrogant just because you're paying the rent here. If you're not happy with this, you can get out." "What? That's ridiculous." I was boiling with anger, feeling like steam was about to shoot out of my ears. I glared at him furiously. "Did I say anything wrong? You created this mess by bringing Betty here in the first place. And what do? Nothing but lays around at home. Who do you think makes it possible for us to live in such a nice place?" I couldn't hold back any longer. "You're so condescending, it's infuriating. Get the heck out now." Rage had completely taken over him. "Fine, don't regret this," I said, gathering only the essentials before leaving the apartment. I quickly found a new place to live. Since I worked remotely, I could do my job from anywhere, and I wasn't fixated on living in a high-rise as long as my new home was comfortable. Now, what to do next? I had no intention of returning to that place. I had been the one paying the rent every month, and I doubted Justin would be interested in taking over. Even if he wanted to, there was no way he could afford it on his salary. My income was far higher than his. I went to consult with the realtor who had helped me before. I'm finding it difficult to keep up with the rent due to personal reasons, I lied, though I could easily afford it. I'm sorry to hear that. What would you like to do? The realtor asked sympathetically. I explained my situation and asked for a favor. A few days later, while I was working, Justin called me. What? I answered. What do you mean, what? What have you done? We've been told to move out because the lease was cancelled. Yes, I asked the property agent for permission to break the lease, I replied calmly. I don't live there anymore, so I have no reason to keep paying the rent. Don't you understand that? But my mom and I still live here. What are we supposed to do? He exclaimed, clearly frustrated. I couldn't believe he was still clinging to that nonsense. I was astounded and said coolly, I don't live there anymore, so why should I continue taking care of the apartment? If you're in trouble, you should talk to your mom and maybe sell some of her things to raise some money. He shot back angrily, it was you who wanted to live in a high-rise. If you don't want to move, why don't you take over the lease yourself? Wait, I said, I guess you can't afford it with your salary. You must be frustrated because you can't come up with a better argument. He was clearly exasperated. You should be able to manage a lower-cost apartment. Why not fight for the lease and move in with your mom? Are you out of your mind? I retorted. My mom's already spent the money from selling her house, and I don't have any savings. How do you expect me to find a new place? None of my business, I added coldly. He had been relying on my income for the most part, so I was baffled at how he still had no savings. It was clear that both he and his mother had been irresponsible. You brought this on yourselves, I said, and you'll have to figure it out from now on. Are you telling us we'll be homeless? You're still my wife, he protested. I told you, figure it out yourself. I'm done with this. Goodbye. I hung up on him. A few minutes later, my phone rang again. It was Betty. Melly, I'm really sorry. I promise I'll pay you back. Please don't kick us out, she begged, her voice trembling with tears. I was taken aback and felt a pang of sadness. I didn't want to teach an older person a lesson, but the reality was harsh. You need to live within your means. If you have a limited retirement income, you should adjust your lifestyle accordingly. If you want a higher standard of living, you need to work for it. As a freelancer, I understood that achieving a certain lifestyle required hard work and financial independence, not relying on others. Really sorry, Betty said, still crying. Please don't let us be out on the street. I'm sorry, I replied coldly. But the apartment has already been leased to someone else. You really do need to move out. This is a matter of regulation. Ended the call and later heard from the realtor that Justin and Betty had begged him to let them stay, but he informed them that a new tenant was moving in soon, and they had to leave. Even if they had stayed, Justin's salary alone would have been consumed by the rent, leaving them unable to afford anything else. It was absurd to expect me to keep paying for their housing while they relied on my support. His outburst had only added to my frustration. The situation had reached the point of no return. What an idiot, I thought. I later heard from acquaintances that Justin and Betty were struggling to find a permanent place to live. They were moving from one motel to another because they couldn't afford the broker's fee or deposit for an apartment, and no one was willing to be their guarantor. Even if they had used a guarantor service, they still needed to cover the broker's fee and deposit themselves. Betty had only worked for a short period, so her Social Security benefits were minimal. They were even having trouble affording food. They had brought this situation upon themselves. Meanwhile, I had managed to secure another major project and was becoming financially more stable. Reflecting on our marriage, I realized that depending on someone else for financial support or leaving everything to a partner is unsustainable. It only leads to pain when things go wrong. Justin and I had separated for a while and eventually divorced. Our feelings for each other had cooled, and there was no reason to stay married. Now, as strangers, I feel a sense of relief. If I were to marry again, I would be more discerning and take my time to find the right partner. A divorce taught me valuable lessons and gave me a broader perspective on life. I'm the head of this household. My decisions are final. If you refuse to follow my rules, divorce is the only option. Even though my husband was having an affair, he still tried to exert control over me. Why should I continue to follow his demands? If that's how he feels, then let's get a divorce. Transferred all our loans into his name, so he would understand the extent of my contribution to our life together. My name is Belle. At 36 years old, I work as a systems engineer. I've been married to Derek for 6 years. We met through work when my company subcontracted tasks to his firm. During my temporary assignment at his company, Derek was always kind and supportive. As we spent more time together outside of work, our relationship grew, leading to this proposal, which I gladly accepted. When I got married, I left my engineering job at the company. The role was incredibly demanding, both physically and mentally, and the pay wasn't great. I worried that continuing in such a stressful job would leave me with little time for my husband, which could strain our relationship. So I decided to transition to freelancing, which offered the flexibility to manage household responsibilities and spend more time with him. Initially, freelancing didn't bring in much income, but with my engineering background, I gradually attracted more clients and saw my earnings improve. I was pleasantly surprised by how quickly my income grew and felt grateful to my husband for supporting us during those early, lean months. I dedicated myself to managing the household, even though cooking wasn't my strong suit. I used recipe books to try new dishes every day, hoping to bring a smile to my husband's face. Thanks for taking care of the cooking and cleaning. It really makes a difference. My husband's praise for my housework brought me joy. In the early days of our marriage, we respected each other and enjoyed a happy life together. After a few years, he suddenly suggested, "Don't you think it's time for us to get a new house?" A new house? I was taken aback. This wasn't like him, as he rarely saved money. Shouldn't we save up a bit more first? What are you talking about? I've been earning a good income, haven't I? Yes, but haven't we avoided any financial issues since we got married? I'm able to manage thanks to my income. I thought but couldn't bring myself to say it to my husband. While he gave me money for household expenses, he tended to spend his own allowance before payday. I made sure to save as much as I could from my earnings and contribute it to our budget. This way, we avoided financial issues. I appreciated being able to live comfortably with his initial support when we first married, so I never mentioned that my income had grown. I didn't want to undermine his self-esteem by revealing that my work-from-home job was bringing in a significant amount. Even if I felt I was spending too much, our lifestyle remained stable, suggesting that my income had likely increased. Perhaps he wasn't fully aware of his own financial situation. I was taken aback by his suggestion, but he seemed eager to build a new home, and I couldn't stop him. "What kind of house are you envisioning?" I'd asked, trying to figure out how to meet his wishes within a budget. However, his list of conditions kept growing. But if we want to include all these features, won't the house end up being quite expensive? It's no big deal. This is a once-in-a-lifetime purchase, and my income should cover it, right? My husband's confidence puzzled me, and in that moment I regretted not sharing the details of my income with him. I decided it was time to set things straight. Derek, when it comes to household expenses, I contribute a significant portion of my income as well. For some reason, he didn't believe me. "Please, don't be so dismissive." "I'm not lying, but I'd prefer if we bought a more affordable house," I explained. However, he dismissed my concerns and ended up using his salary to take out a loan for a house that stretched our finances. Initially, I thought we were managing our money well, but over the years, his spending habits became increasingly extravagant. He started splurging on designer clothes, watches, and frequent nights out with his colleagues. Despite working overtime to compensate, his reckless spending became hard to ignore. Eventually, he decided to build a new house, and despite the financial strain, he made it happen. Wow, this house is incredible. It really feels like a mark of success, doesn't it? My husband's excitement was understandable. The new house was indeed impressive, spacious, beautiful, and comfortable. My workroom had expanded, allowing me to fit a large desk and work more efficiently. The improved workspace had boosted my productivity, which I truly appreciated. However, the monthly mortgage payments were a constant source of stress. My husband didn't seem to grasp the full impact of our long-term loan. Though the house was in his name, his tendency to overspend meant his account was perpetually empty. Consequently, I had to transfer my income to cover the mortgage. Frustration was growing, and eventually, I decided it was time to have a serious conversation with him about it. Don't you think you've been spending too much lately? We need to consider things like the mortgage for the house, I said, hoping to address our financial concerns. My husband frowned and responded defensively, "What are you talking about? We've been managing fine since we bought the house. If we were in trouble, it would be obvious. You're just fixating on minor details. And maybe if you managed your own money better, you wouldn't be so stressed." That's not my issue. Wait a minute. I'm always thinking about how to cut costs on daily expenses, he added, trying to deflect. I'm using the money you give me along with my earnings to cover the mortgage and other expenses. So please stop talking to me like that. What's going on with you? Also, don't act like you're doing a lot when your contributions aren't substantial. The one who earns the most isn't necessarily the greatest. I'm the one managing our finances, so I'm the one making things work. Please keep your opinions to yourself. My husband's dismissive response left me stunned. He had been kind and considerate when we first married, but things had changed drastically. Our relationship had become strained, we barely spoke and sometimes didn't even greet each other. He was working more overtime than ever, often coming home late at night. I wondered if it was worth continuing our marriage in this state. We were merely cohabiting without meaningful communication. If things stayed this way, divorce might be the better option. However, I wanted to reconcile if possible. After much thought, I decided to take the first step and reach out to him. My resolve was instantly shattered by an unexpected discovery. While I was out in town buying a birthday gift for a friend, I spotted my husband, who should have been at work, walking with a young woman I didn't recognize. They were strolling together casually, and the sight was enough to confirm my worst fears: an affair. Determined to uncover the truth, I hired a private investigator. 3 weeks later, I visited the detective agency to hear the results. The investigation confirmed my suspicions. My husband was indeed having an affair. The woman was a colleague of his, and their relationship had been ongoing for about 2 years. I finally understood why my husband had been spending recklessly and coming home late due to overtime over the past 2 years. He was having an affair. The anger I felt towards him, especially after the verbal abuse he had directed at me, was overwhelming. It felt humiliating to have tried to protect his self-esteem and our marriage when he was the one betraying me. Determined to act, I set aside any remaining doubts and resolved to confront him. I hurried home, finding him lounging on the sofa, engrossed in a sports program. I positioned myself between him and the TV and spread out the evidence of his affair before him. "Explain this." He looked momentarily stunned at the photo evidence but quickly adopted a defiant attitude. "Oh, that's Meg. She's my new wife." "New wife?" I asked, bewildered. "Now that you know the truth, there's no reason to keep you around. Unfortunately, you're no longer needed." "What are you talking about?" "To be honest, I don't see a place for you in my life anymore. But Meg doesn't want to handle the household chores, so you can stay and take care of that for her." "What? Are you out of your mind?" "I would never agree to that." My husband's face flushed with anger. I'm the breadwinner in this household, so my decisions are final. If you can't follow my orders, then we'll get a divorce. Despite his affair, he still tried to exert control over me. Why should I have to listen to him? Fine, let's get a divorce. Huh. First of all, you had an affair, so we can't continue our marriage. Let's just get a divorce. My husband was taken aback but eventually agreed. All right, but don't come to me later with any regrets. I want a divorce, but you'll need to help me transfer the names on the utility bills and the car loans we just took out. I quickly shifted all the loans into his name and finalized the divorce. He probably thought it was over, but for me, it was just the beginning. You should understand how much I supported your lifestyle. The day after the divorce was finalized, I was comfortably settled into my new apartment when I started receiving numerous calls from my ex-husband. Since he hadn't paid any compensation yet, I hadn't blocked his number. When I answered, he sounded flustered and insisted we meet. I reluctantly agreed to a cafe meeting, only to find that he brought his mistress along. Wow, you two look quite cozy together. What's going on? Why didn't you tell me about this? Every month, I'm seeing significant deductions for loans. And why are the food expenses, car loans, utilities, and everything else so high? What's the point of shifting all of this onto me? I divorced you and left the house, so it's only fair. I don't have any other motives. Shut up. This is fraud. I'm going to sue. My ex-husband and his mistress exchanged glances, their arms linked as they glared at me. They tried to blame me for everything, but I wasn't about to accept such absurd accusations. It's your fault for not understanding the situation correctly. I provided you with various documents, didn't I? Since the loan for the house was originally in your name, it's only fair that you cover those expenses. I've been transferring the necessary funds into your account. How could you manage such large payments with your limited income? As an ex-husband who clearly struggles with comprehension, I've explained this before. I work as a freelance engineer, and my annual income is currently around $200,000. Does that clarify things for you? My ex-husband was taken aback to learn that I was earning significantly more than he was. But his surprise was irrelevant at this point. What mattered now was that I had yet to claim my rightful compensation, and I intended to pursue it through a lawyer. Are you trying to extort money from us? I'm simply exercising my legal rights. I'll also be filing claims against your mistress. But as a result, I received compensation from both of them for the emotional distress they had caused me. The woman my ex-husband was involved with was devastated to find out he hadn't been using his own money to cover the loan. The next day, she vanished from his life. Their affair, like many others, ended when the financial support dried up. My ex-husband now leads a solitary life, struggling to manage his loan payments and make ends meet while shuttling between work and home. He's getting exactly what he deserves, but he couldn't come to terms with it and started gossiping about his affair at the office. His mistress accused him of abuse, leading to a messy public dispute. As a result, both their reputations were tarnished and no one took their claims seriously. His financial difficulties only deepened and his work performance suffered due to the stress of his mounting debts. Ultimately, he faced a demotion and a pay cut. It's a consequence of his own making, and honestly, he brought it on himself. Initially, moving into my new high-rise apartment made me nervous, but now I've settled in and am able to fully enjoy my life here. While I'm not currently interested in marriage or romance, that doesn't mean I want to be alone forever. If I do meet someone in the future, I hope we can build a supportive and mutually fulfilling relationship, drawing on the lessons I've learned from my past experiences. For now, I'm focused on working hard and making the most of this time for myself. My name is Gracie and I'm 27 years old. I balance being a housewife and holding a position as an office worker. My husband Aaron is the same age as me. He adores his mother Eliza a little too much and she seems to enjoy making my life difficult as a hobby. Despite the ups and downs of our marriage, we recently celebrated our second anniversary. I'm proud of how well I've managed to endure everything, and I find that work has become my escape. My dedication has paid off, leading to multiple promotions, which is uncommon for women in my field. Currently, I'm on a business trip, traveling across Europe for meetings. Right now, I'm in the middle of a very important one. Just as the meeting started, my phone, set to silent mode, began vibrating persistently. Seeing 2 missed calls, I thought it might be an emergency. I discreetly checked my phone under the desk, and to my surprise, the missed calls were from Eliza. What could possibly be going on? I wondered, feeling a twinge of anxiety. I quickly excused myself and stepped out to return the call, only to see Eliza calling again. "Hello, Gracie, where are you right now?" Eliza's irritated voice greeted me as I tapped the call button. I hesitated, thinking maybe I shouldn't have answered. "Hello, Eliza. How are you today? Is something urgent? Why aren't you answering me? I just asked where you are, Gracie," she snapped, her arrogance grating on my nerves. I was annoyed, but since I was in the middle of an important meeting, I didn't want to prolong the conversation. I responded calmly, "I'm on a business trip in a meeting. Didn't Aaron tell you? Can I call you back when I'm done?" Eliza's tone grew sharper. "Of course, Aaron told me, but what are you doing leaving your house and husband alone? Come back home immediately." Her sudden and unreasonable demand caught me off guard. "I'm sorry, Eliza, but I'm in the middle of an important meeting. I really can't just leave." She cut me off, her frustration evident. "You're so bossy, even though you're just Aaron's wife. I don't care for your excuses. Come back home this instant. Today is a very important day. Do you understand me?" I blinked in confusion. "An important day? What are you talking about?" I asked, trying to keep my composure. "We're celebrating my 60th birthday today," she replied smugly. Her words stunned me. We had planned to celebrate her birthday at the end of the month, and I had even helped arrange a special dinner at a nice restaurant. Why was she insisting on celebrating today, in the middle of my business trip and on a weekday? This was unexpected and completely out of the blue. I was getting fed up with Eliza's attempts to bully me yet again. It seemed like she got meaner every year, always finding ways to torment me, even when she knew I was in the middle of important work. Frustrated, I decided to stand my ground. "As I said before, I'm on a business trip and can't come home right now," I told her firmly. "Oh, how funny," she replied with a sneer. "Because I called Aaron earlier, and he said he'd take the day off for me. All the relatives will be there. Except you, Gracie. It's always work, work, work with you. You're so cold. What do you think of your own husband's parents?" I could feel her sarcastic words digging deeper, but I knew if I let her continue, it would never end. I was still in the middle of a meeting and couldn't waste more time on this conversation. "I'm sorry, Eliza, but I can't attend your 60th birthday celebration, no matter what you say," I stated clearly, hoping to end the call. Suddenly, Eliza's sarcasm vanished. She took a deep breath and spat out, "Well then, I won't recognize you as family at all. Don't bother coming back home. Ever. It's a divorce. Aaron was too good for you in the first place." Her words were like a slap in the face. I felt a surge of anger and hurt, but I didn't want to prolong the call with a rebuttal. I simply said, Okay, I'll talk to you when I get home. I'm sorry, but I have to go now." "What's with that attitude? I told you not to come back. I'll talk to Aaron myself," she snapped before hanging up on me. Exhausted from the encounter, I let out a sigh and returned to the meeting. After 2 more days of meetings, I finally made my way home. I was so consumed with anger and frustration toward my mother-in-law that I barely remembered how I got home. As I opened the front door and called out, "I'm home," I heard my husband's voice, weary and drained. "Welcome me back." I kicked off my heels and headed straight to the living room, leaving my luggage by the door. There I was met with a pile of cardboard boxes and the sight of Aaron sweaty and taping up the boxes. "What's with all the boxes?" I asked, my voice laced with suspicion. Aaron, looking defeated, explained that they were all my belongings. He then told me that Eliza had indeed thrown her 60th birthday celebration on the day she called me, without me there. She had spread the word to all the relatives that I had neglected her special day and treated her arrogantly over the phone. To top it off, she announced that she was going to force Aaron to divorce me and send me back to my parents' house, branding me as an unworthy wife for her precious son. This sounded exactly like something Eliza would do, so I asked Aaron, "And then what happened? Did you agree to the divorce?" "No, I didn't exactly agree," he mumbled. "But she told me to pack up your stuff and I didn't have much choice." What was I supposed to do? His words hit me like a ton of bricks. What? Does that mean you didn't argue with her? Does that mean you're okay with getting a divorce? Aaron looked down, his voice weak. "My father, Alex, said that if Eliza's in a bad mood, it'll be hell for him, so he told me to just go along with it." I was stunned. Aaron's willingness to accept a divorce so easily, just to keep his mother happy, was beyond belief. It was clear that in his family, no one stood up to Eliza, a father who was controlled by his wife and a son who adored and obeyed his mother. It felt like no one was on my side. As I stood there in silent disbelief, Aaron looked at me with pleading eyes and said, "What my mother says is absolute. This is just until her mood settles down. This divorce is just a sham and promise. I'll come back for you when things cool down." I wished Aaron could use those pleading eyes on his own mother. How could a grown man like him be so utterly terrified of her? It was baffling. For a moment I almost felt self-loathing, questioning what I had ever seen in him that made me marry him in the first place. But then a thought struck me. Maybe this was my chance. If I stayed with Aaron, Eliza would never stop tormenting me, always pushing me toward divorce. Maybe I was lucky to be getting out of this marriage with so little trouble. I had the means to support myself, and even if I ended up alone, I wouldn't lack for anything. Suddenly, it felt like a fog had lifted from my mind. I looked at Aaron and said, "Fine. Let's get a divorce." With that decision made, I immediately called Eliza. It took 3 rings before she answered. "Hello." "As you wish," I said calmly. "We're getting a divorce." Eliza's voice instantly brightened with triumph. "Yes, please, get out of Aaron's house. You've finally realized you're not good enough for him, haven't you? I'm so relieved. Don't worry. I'll find Aaron an obedient, pretty, and parent-friendly wife this time." "I'm sure Aaron will be in high demand," Eliza continued with a smug tone. "Don't worry, I'll take care of my son until he finds his next wife." After unloading all the sarcasm she could muster, I decided to give her a parting shot. "Well, don't misunderstand me, Mother," I said casually. Eliza, still in her good mood, scoffed. "Aren't you a sore loser? Well, don't mind me. Oh, by the way, Gracie, I got the divorce papers from the city office and handed them to Aaron. Don't forget to sign them." Without another word, she hung up the phone. Aaron, who had been listening to the entire conversation, actually looked relieved. I couldn't believe it. Is Aaron really this clueless? I thought to myself. Then I turned to him and asked, "By the way, honey, does your mother know that you're a full-time house husband?" Aaron's expression shifted to one of discomfort. "How can I tell her that? My mother lives for the idea that I'm an elite, working for a major company." His tone was defensive, but it only made things clearer. I recalled the hints that he had been hiding the truth from Eliza all along. At home, Aaron always wore a shabby sweatshirt, but when he met up with Eliza, he went out of his way to change into a suit. Whenever Eliza called during the day, he pretended not to be home, giving her the impression he was hard at work. At her 60th birthday celebration, Eliza had proudly announced that Aaron was a devoted son who had taken time off work to attend her party. She had even boasted that with his status, he would have no trouble finding a more obedient and prettier wife than me in no time. I'm sure everything will eventually come to light once we're divorced. But Aaron, who's always been the golden child in Eliza's eyes, would never dare reveal anything that might disappoint her. Eliza, who thinks her son is brilliant and infallible, has no idea that her so-called elite son quit his job at the major company. The truth is, Aaron left his job about a year ago. The son she once bragged about as a status symbol is now unemployed and a full-time house husband. Aaron had to quit after making a major mistake at work that resulted in a written apology, a demotion and a significant pay cut. I doubt he ever told his mother about that incident. The whole situation shattered Aaron. He had always been pampered and spoiled by Eliza, leaving him emotionally fragile and sensitive. The stress of having to write a report on his mistake led to palpitations and nausea whenever he even thought about going to the office. Eventually, he couldn't bring himself to go to work at all. First, he started calling in sick and using paid leave, but soon he stopped calling in altogether. The number of unauthorized absences piled up, and eventually, he was fired. Now Aaron has no intention of finding another job and has been relying entirely on my income. Aaron still can't bring himself to tell Eliza the truth because he knows how furious and disappointed she would be. A part of me is disappointed I won't be around to see Eliza's reaction when she finally learns the truth. I wouldn't be surprised if she were so shocked she had a stroke. But then again, it's not my problem anymore. Handing me the divorce papers, Aaron said, "This is just a cover to convince my mother, okay?" He handed me the divorce papers, which I promptly submitted. Then I signed a lease for a new apartment and moved in as quickly as possible. A month later, I received an unexpected phone call from my ex-mother-in-law, Eliza, someone I thought I had cut ties with for good. Curious about what she wanted, I answered the call. "What do you want from me now? Aren't you glad you got rid of me?" I asked sarcastically. "Well, you're still the same," she replied, her tone as condescending as ever. "Just listen to me." She launched into a story about Aaron. After our divorce, Eliza had visited Aaron's apartment several times to help with household chores, but every time she went, she found him lounging around in his room. There was no sign of him going to work, and he didn't seem to be ill. She then asked if I had any idea what was going on. Suppressing the urge to laugh, I replied nonchalantly, I see. Well, of course, he's like that because Aaron has no intention of working ever again." It was as if Eliza had forgotten she was the one who had insisted on kicking me out. "Gracie, can you do something about it?" she asked, as if I owed her any favors. "Why should I?" I shot back. "You didn't want me in your family and wanted nothing to do with me." Her audacity was unbelievable, only reaching out when it suited her after years of mistreating me. She then asked, "Well, I was wondering if you said something to Aaron before you left." I couldn't believe her nerve. How much did she want to paint me as the villain? Did she really think the problem lay with me and not her son? I'm the one who was hurt, you know," I retorted. "Oh, really? You only married Aaron because you wanted a luxurious life, right? So what's so hurtful about getting divorced?" Eliza sneered as if I had married Aaron for his money. I couldn't help but scoff. "You must be joking. I was the one supporting Aaron financially during our marriage. I was the one who provided for you," I said. To be honest, I couldn't afford to live extravagantly because of Aaron. I was fine with the divorce, but should I file for alimony? Eliza was taken aback. "How dare you?" she snapped. "You're just making that up. Gracie, you must have forgotten to ask for alimony. Aaron has a higher income and a better position than you. Don't be unreasonable. If you want money, Eric can pay whatever you need. After all, Aaron is an elite working for a major company." Her response was maddeningly out of touch. Maybe Aaron hadn't told Eliza the truth yet, and I didn't want to just be a tattletale. But this was a chance to see how Eliza would react to the reality of Aaron's situation, and it felt like a good opportunity to get back at her. So I decided to reveal the truth. Your proud son is a full-time house husband. He quit his job a long time ago. What? Eliza's voice rose in disbelief. You're lying, she shouted, her tone so loud I thought she might burst my eardrums. I pulled the phone away from my ear for a moment and said calmly, why don't you check with the company? You'll see who's telling the truth. Eliza fell silent for a moment. Then she stammered, well, if that's true, what are we going to do? I can't support my son with just my pension, and no one will marry him now that he's unemployed. Eliza's voice had taken on a desperate tone, clearly reflecting her concern. My face started to show a hint of a grin. What are we going to do? She'd asked. Eliza fell silent for a moment, then started muttering to someone nearby. When she spoke again, her voice was pleading. Gracie, please come home. I was taken aback by her sudden shift. No, we're already divorced, I replied firmly. I wouldn't come back to your family if heaven and earth turned upside down. Amidst the commotion, I heard someone near Eliza shouting. It sounded like Aaron's voice. I told you I'd come get you back when things cool down. Eliza's voice became frantic. Yes, you could remarry my son. What are you talking about? No way, I retorted. I wouldn't do it for the world. Don't joke about this. Eliza tried to sound grateful but was clearly struggling. Thank you, seriously, okay. I reminded her one last time not to regret her decision and made it clear I wanted nothing more to do with Aaron or her. I did what you asked, so please stop changing your mind. Eliza responded defensively, but you've been talking back to me this whole time, with that nonchalant attitude. I didn't think you'd actually go through with the divorce. In response, I let out my frustration. I was just putting up with it. Besides, Aaron packed up my stuff and kicked me out without a word. Eliza continued to make excuses. That was just a prank. A prank? I said, incredulous. It's worse than that. Frustrated and realizing there was no point in continuing this conversation, I glanced at my watch. It was nearly 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and my lunch break had been wasted on this futile exchange. Ah, Eliza, are you done now? I asked. She responded with her annoyingly sweet voice. What, Gracie? What did you say? Her tone was as infuriating as ever. I was certain she'd never be satisfied with anything I said. I'm going to hang up now. I have another meeting in a few minutes and need to review some documents, I said, starting to pull the phone away from my ear. But Eliza wouldn't let up. Wait, Gracie. Hey, Gracie, say something. She continued to scream, her frustration palpable. Aaron, you didn't do it right, and look at the mess it's caused. Listening to her blame everyone else for her problems was nauseating. I ended the call abruptly and blocked her number, unwilling to endure any more of her tirade. Soon after, Aaron started contacting me persistently, trying to reconcile. Seeing an opportunity, I asked my lawyer to pursue alimony from him. To my surprise, Aaron's family, perhaps intimidated by legal pressure, paid the alimony in a lump sum. It seemed Alex and Eliza had advanced the money, and their irritation with Aaron was palpable. They berated him daily to find a job, which Aaron found unbearable. It appeared that the once proud elites had fallen on hard times. Aaron had returned to his parents' house, unable to afford rent, and was living off their retirement savings. He blamed his parents for the divorce and seemed to be squandering their funds. Both Aaron and his family were locked in a cycle of blame, refusing to take responsibility for their actions. They were even planning to apply for welfare soon. I hoped the government would address their behavior, as it's hard to be self-serving when reliant on public assistance. As for me, the proposal I presented on my business trip was accepted, and I signed a major new contract. I received another promotion and a higher salary. I was living a comfortable life as a wealthy single woman, free from the torment of in-laws and financial dependence on family. If I ever decide to marry again, I'll make sure to thoroughly vet any potential partner to avoid another mother-loving spouse or troublesome in-laws. Apparently, there was a massive fire at Company X. The news hit me like a ton of bricks because that's where my husband works. I hope he's okay. I quickly dialed his number, my heart racing as I prayed he had escaped the fire. The phone rang, and just when I thought I couldn't stand the suspense any longer, I heard his voice. "Hello, Max. Where are you? Are you safe?" Relief flooded through me, and my voice rose with the emotion. He sounded irritated as he replied, "Why are you yelling? I'm at work. Don't call me while I'm working," and abruptly hung up. At least he wasn't caught in the fire, but something about his tone seemed off. My name is Mona, and I'm 32 years old. I'm a nurse, and my work has always been a central part of my life. I got married 3 years ago, just before I turned 30. I was fortunate to marry in my 20s, if only just. I met my husband, Max, through a mutual friend. We clicked instantly and have been enjoying married life in his company housing. Although we've been married for 3 years, we still don't have children, but I'm confident that we can build a happy family together. Max can be a bit self-centered at times, but overall, he's a kind and loving person. He often expresses his love for me, and I feel secure with him. Lately though, he seems overwhelmed with work, spending more and more time on it, even on his days off. He must be exhausted because he's become distant at home, barely paying attention to me. After dinner, he usually collapses on the sofa in front of the TV, though he doesn't seem to watch it. Instead, he's constantly glued to his phone, with the TV as mere background noise. When I spoke to him, all I got were brief responses like "yeah" or "oh." At first, I wondered if I had said something to upset him, but I decided to chalk it up to his busy work schedule. He must be exhausted, I thought, so I made it a point to bring him lunch and prepare dinner every day. I put extra effort into making sure our meals were nutritious and well-balanced. Then something strange happened. The day before, a coworker called me, asking if I could switch from the night shift to the day shift. It was a sudden change, so I quickly emailed my husband to let him know. I mentioned that I'd be working the day shift instead, and that I'd make dinner and wait for him. But he didn't reply. I assumed he was busy at work and focused on my own tasks. Yet even after I finished work, there was still no response from him. He used to reply quickly, even while he was at work, sometimes even adding emojis to his messages. This time though, he just read my message and didn't respond. Is he just swamped with work, or is this what happens after 3 years of marriage? Feeling a bit down, I stopped by the supermarket on my way home and picked up ingredients to make another nutritious dinner for him. It was a particularly cold day, so I decided on a warm, hearty one-pot dish. I prepped everything, chopping the ingredients, and then waited for my husband to come home so I could start cooking right away. But no matter how long I waited, he never came home. He usually gets home around 7 p.m., but by the time he finally walked through the door, it was already 9 p.m. "Welcome back. You're late tonight," I greeted him. "Did you have to work overtime?" "Oh yeah, but did you have to switch to the day shift suddenly?" Yeah. A coworker had an emergency, so I had to cover for them. Sorry I didn't tell you sooner." "I see. Well, I guess you couldn't help it, but it's a bit annoying to find out on the same day. I might have made plans to grab a drink or something." "Oh, you're right. I'm sorry." I apologized as I turned on the stove to heat up the hot pot. "You haven't eaten yet?" "No, I thought I'd wait for you." "Thanks, but next time, you don't have to wait for me." Hearing him say that made me feel a little sad. I waited for the hot pot to come to a boil. When it started simmering, I served my husband's portion, and then mine. I was starving after waiting so long for him. As I dug in, savoring the delicious meal, I noticed he wasn't eating much. "What's wrong? You're not eating much," I asked, concerned. He seemed a bit flustered and replied, "Oh, yeah." Then he hesitated before saying, "Actually, I was working late, so a junior colleague bought me a rice bowl. I'm not really hungry now." Okay, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. But you should have told me that before I started making the hot pot. I think he noticed I was a bit upset. All right, just put my portion in the fridge. I'll eat it tomorrow morning, he said, attempting to lighten the mood. He then lay down on the couch, and after a few minutes, he suddenly got up and said, "I'm going for a walk." That's unusual, I remarked. I haven't been getting enough exercise lately, and with all the late nights at work, I need a change of pace, he explained as he started getting ready to head out. Sitting alone at the table, finishing my meal, I felt a bit empty. Ended up putting my portion in the fridge too, feeling like I'd eaten too much. We hadn't spent much time together lately, so I decided to join him for the walk. But he refused, saying it wasn't good for me to move around right after eating. It also mentioned he planned to go for a long walk and wanted to be alone. So he left on his own. Something about his behavior felt off, so I decided to follow him secretly. Unfortunately, my fears were confirmed almost immediately. Despite my quiet steps, my husband walked with determination, stopping in front of a park that was a bit far from our house. He looked around, as if checking to see if anyone was watching, and then seemed to be communicating with someone on his phone. I wondered who he could possibly be talking to. A few minutes later, a car pulled up. My husband walked over and started chatting casually with the driver. It was dark, so I moved closer to get a better look. That's when I saw her, a woman with long curly hair and glossy lipstick, sitting in the driver's seat, laughing happily as my husband got into the passenger seat. He's definitely having an affair, isn't he? Before I could fully process it, the car drove off with the two of them inside. Stood there for a while, stunned. Then a text message from my husband arrived. He claimed he had randomly run into someone he knew and would be home a little late. Someone he just happened to meet. I didn't believe him for a second. He had said he wasn't hungry, yet it was past 2 a.m. when he finally came home. He didn't even notice that I was awake. He seemed tipsy and went straight to the kitchen for a glass of water. After that night, he'd often worked overtime, conveniently only when I was on the day shift. We already had a hard time aligning our days off, but now it seemed impossible. Yesterday, he worked late, and today he claimed he had to work on his day off too. But is it really work? Or is he meeting that woman I saw? I couldn't stop thinking about it. I went online and started searching for information about detective agencies. Before I knew it, I had submitted an investigation request to the most reputable one I could find. I felt guilty for going behind his back, but I reasoned that if nothing suspicious was found, I could finally put my doubts to rest and trust him again. Waiting for the investigation results was agonizing. My husband remained as distant as ever, and every time, even as I saw his face, I couldn't get the woman out of my mind. I needed clarity, and soon. Then something unexpected happened. It was Saturday and I was busy with my day shift as usual. My husband was also working, despite it being his day off. I tried to focus on my tasks, thinking that since we were both occupied with work, I could push those troubling thoughts aside for now. Suddenly, I heard the distant wail of fire truck sirens. They grew louder and closer, and just when I thought they would pass by, more sirens followed. It wasn't just one fire truck. There were 2, 3, maybe more. This had to be a serious fire nearby. A sense of unease settled in my chest. 2 of my colleagues who had been in a hospital room returned, their faces grave. They were discussing the fire. "Do you mean the fire nearby?" I asked, trying to piece things together. "Yes, that's right," one of them confirmed. Apparently, there was a big fire at Company X. In that moment, it felt like I'd been struck on the head with a hammer. Company X was where my husband worked. I quickly explained the situation to my colleagues and rushed to call my husband to make sure he was safe. "Please be okay," I thought as I dialed his number. Even though we hadn't been talking much lately, I still saw him off every morning when he left for work. I prayed that he had managed to escape the fire. The phone rang, and finally, I heard his voice. "Hello, Max. Where are you? Are you safe?" I asked, relief flooding my voice. He seemed annoyed. "Why are you talking so loud?" "I'm at work. Don't call me while I'm working," he snapped and then abruptly hung up. At least he wasn't caught in the fire, but something about his response felt off. How could he be working when there was a fire and multiple fire trucks on the scene? It didn't add up. And why was he so cold when I was just trying to check on him? Anger started to build inside me. Had he been using those morning goodbyes as an excuse to meet another woman all this time? I made a decision then and there. I was leaving him. As soon as I got home, I started packing my things. When I checked the mailbox, I saw that the results from the detective agency had arrived. That sealed it. I was leaving with the truth in hand. My parents came over to help me pack, and the moving company was on its way. Had my things moved out immediately. My husband didn't seem to have any idea that I knew the truth. He didn't even contact me that night, which only confirmed my suspicion that he was with his lover the entire time. I packed up most of the furniture and appliances I'd had since my single days. The room was nearly empty, stripped of any trace of my life there. As I stood in the deserted space, I realized I had no lingering attachment to this house or the life I had led within it. Moved my belongings to my parents' house and immediately started searching for a new place to live on my own. It wasn't until the next day that my husband finally called. "Hey, what's going on? Most of your stuff is gone." "Of course. Moved out. What? What the hell were you thinking? When are you coming back? What about my meals? The house chores?" His questions left me stunned. That's all he cared about. Talking to him reminded me of the fire at his company. He wasn't at work. He was with his affair partner instead. The anger that had been simmering inside me flared up again. "Why didn't you get another woman to take care of that?" "Huh? What are you talking about? You were with a woman named Linda yesterday, weren't you?" "What? No. I was working at the office." "Oh, really? So how long did you work yesterday?" "It was a busy day. Even though it was my day off, I worked late into the evening." "I see," I said coldly. "That's why I was so surprised when you moved out. Why don't you stop lying already?" "Huh? You lied about going to work, didn't you?" "I wasn't lying. I was working. How can you claim to have worked until the evening when there was a fire at your office during the day?" "What fire?" "When I called you, several fire trucks were dispatched to your company to handle a blaze. I called to make sure you were okay. You told me not to call while you were working, acting like there was no fire at all. Well, and I had evidence of your affair from a detective agency. You can't deny it." His voice faltered. "Oh no. You'll need to deal with my lawyer for any further correspondence. I'll be pursuing alimony." He pleaded repeatedly for my forgiveness, but my feelings had long since dissipated. "I'm sorry, but there's no way to fix this. I'm hanging up now." Wait. I proceeded with my lawyer and demanded both a divorce and alimony. The divorce was finalized with all the evidence solidly backing my claims. My husband and his affair partner paid a fair amount in alimony. It turned out his partner was a junior colleague from his workplace. News of their affair quickly spread through the company, especially during such a dramatic time. Their actions during the fire only added to the negative sentiment among their colleagues, leaving them both facing a lot of shame and cold stares. They truly deserved it. Meanwhile, I moved into a new apartment and embraced my comfortable single life. As a nurse with a stable job, I'm taking my time and not rushing into a new relationship. I'm enjoying my own time and hoping to meet a sincere man when the time is right. Even though I discovered the affair unexpectedly because of the fire, it was bound to come to light eventually. He deserved every bit of it. Enjoy your